How do you approach writing an enticing dialogue?
I try to ensure that the dialogue is authentic and sounds genuine so that the characters are believable. I think if you don't have that, then the dialogue isn't going to sound enticing or genuine at all. Um, and other than that, I always try to keep characters' motivations in mind. Again, just try to establish a believable character first, and then the story will follow, sort of.
How complicated was the RTS and RPG mix as a core game concept?
It it was complicated for sure, especially as you have certain expectations to each of those both genres if you take them single already. Like you had to basically make sure that all the features you expect when playing an RPG are there, but also you have to make sure all the features you are expecting when playing an RTS are there, and then you kind of have to keep it controllable. So that was a big thing, but it was also something that I really liked working on, as it is, I think, RPG and RTS make really great hybrid games.
So yeah, I guess writing a story for an RPG RTS hybrid is really challenging because what I wanted was that the RTS segments of the game didn't feel completely separated from the RPG, like that they sort of tie into each other, and I didn't want the players to think, oh, now they had to put in some RTS gameplay. I wanted it to be natural, to be believable in the context of the story. And also, of course, you're a bit limited if you write for an RTS, because it always has to include armed conflict between two factions or war, as a general theme, to deal with the topic of war in an appropriate manner. Because ultimately, what you're doing is you're sending soldiers into war, into their certain death for 50% of the game. And at the same time, I wanted the character or the main characters to be like believable human beings, and that was really hard, I guess. But I think we did a pretty good job there.
Blending these two genres isn't, I think, naturally wrong, because they have some ways to tie them in very naturally. I think the way that you can focus the RPG on the heroes doesn't hurt the RTS gameplay. It's just a way of how can the player focus on both aspects of the same time. And for example, in a game like StarCraft or Warcraft, it requires a lot of micromanagement. So you have to select your workers, give them orders individually. So we came up somewhere mid-development with a system where you don't have to micromanage your workers. So you have the time to continue playing with your RPG party. And I think it helped, greatly to achieve that perfect blend.
Design and writing, eye to eye level, or is one discipline in charge?
Of course, the design sort of dictates the writing. As I said before, if you write an RTS, then you can't, write a contemporary story about fathers struggling with his daughter's drug addiction or something. It needs to be about war, it needs to be about conflict. Other than that, I think it's on an eye-to-eye level pretty much. I think that's how it should be, because if one department takes the lead, so to speak, then it will affect the other department negatively. So I think the best possible result is if both the story and the gameplay sort of harmonize or synergize with each other.
They have strong impacts on each other, of course, as we are working for an already existing franchise, and the SpellForce especially was very heavy in storytelling already. It was completely clear that we have to make sure that the storyline and the narrative that you expect from a SpellForce game works out. And based on that, also on the gameplay mechanics that were introduced in the older game, of course, you already had a framework in which you basically start designing. We worked closer together as it got into more details, as of course it is really important to to get a good interaction between gameplay mechanics and the storytelling. As game design, especially for me, is an experience design. You can't really disconnect narrative from gameplay, as the player won't do it either. You have to make sure that the whole experience works out. So it simply doesn't work that the one overrides the other. That wouldn't be a good game, in my opinion.
What was your goal for the SpellForce 3 UI?
The UI, the major goal was to get it working at all, because if you have like hundreds of features for the RPG and the RTS, and you have to combine all of that into one UI that's somehow still readable and understandable, that was a huge challenge, really. But I think we mostly managed it. We need to make some things more clear, like sometimes you don't notice if you have to go to a certain place for a quest, like we have to add some additional quest markers to that I'd like to see, but mostly it seems to work. People seem to understand it, and that's the main thing. And it looks pretty.
UI was one of the most difficult tasks we had to tackle, as the game has a lot of features and you have to control really a lot of stuff, do all the RPG and RTS elements. So our main goal was to keep it understandable and easy controllable. That's, for example, the reason why we again go for the click and fight system that we implemented, that you have the easy possibility to use all your heroes' abilities even in big battles between units. So for the interface, it was really like the biggest challenge for us to, okay, we have such an immense amount of features that you need to control. How do we get it into one interface that still kind of works out well and gives you all the control you need?
How big was the SpellForce 3 team in total?
I think in total it was about 40 to 45. We had about 35 regular team members, and here on site it was at max, I think, 25.
How did you keep consistency with not everybody being on site?
Of course, we had written guidelines of how the most important aspects worked, and we basically had daily Skype calls and we're talking about the work that was done and how we continue. So we had really a lot of feedback loops, so that there simply can't be any disconnection, so that everybody always knows what to do and what are the important things in the lore and the story that you have to have an open eye for.
Well, we had a story bible, style sheets and all that, and also we just did a lot of stand-ups and scrums and meetings within the story department.
How important is a game like SpellForce 3 for Germany as a game development location?
I hope it's very important, because, well, people will see, hey, Germans can make cool games too, so let's see.
I think Germany, a game development location, has always been known for creating these type of games. So very mechanically focused games in the RTS genre. That was something that Germany was very well known for. It's always good, I think, for a country to bring these type of big projects to the market, to attract also talent and put it on the roadmap. And also I think nowadays there's a big focus from politicians now more towards new media and game development. So I mean, it's key that we also develop big projects here in Germany.
I like to think that it's very important, I think. So yeah, I think it's always good to see ambitious projects, especially in a country like Germany, you know, especially of this genre. So I'm pretty happy with what we did here.
In retrospect, are there any things you wish you had done differently?
A few little things, of course, yeah. Like, I'm pretty happy that the main game mechanics and the main interactions of the games turned out well. But there are, of course, some aspects in the gameplay that I would implement slightly different, of course. But I'm super happy how everything turned out regarding the gameplay.
I should have invested more time in communicating the changes I did to the missions to the scripters beforehand. I was so absorbed with the story that I kind of just brushed that off as unimportant, but ultimately I think that would have saved us a lot of bugs and a lot of stress.
There are a lot of things that you would have done differently if you would have known like how it turned out. And I think even if things would have been done differently, then I would be sitting here the same way saying the same thing. So I think there very little we really regret here as a whole. I mean, it's just small things, I think, but yeah, I think for the future we will those still draw our conclusions and do things very differently.
What is your favorite part of SpellForce 3?
I really like the characters. So there are these optional dialogues you can have with them, which are just conversation basically, but you can talk to them about their background story and all that, and I really like how the characters turn out.
Well, my favorite part personally is the freedom of choice you have, that we, in the main missions, that we don't force the player to play with a specific faction, and that you are free to only unlock the factions and the upgrades that you want, and you basically say, hey, I'm an orc player, I only like orcs, then we don't force you to play the elves, for example.
Well, I didn't play through the game myself yet, so I can't talk about the quests, but we have a little Easter egg, yeah. In Everlight, that's the biggest city in the game, we have a small tavern that's kind of built like our favorite tavern here in Munich, because we have some medieval tavern, it's called the Schandgeige, where we usually go just for hanging out in the evening, and it's really cool. And we built a version of that in the city and set all of us devs in front of it. You can click on them and see the names, and some of the devs do funny stuff in it.
Why should everyone interested in fantasy, RTS or RPG take a look at SpellForce 3?
Because we have all of that and it's cool. I guess a marketing person could tell you better why, but I don't know, it's fun.
Just a different game. It's blending these two genres in a natural way. You can play it also in co-op, so I think there's plenty of stuff to discover.
We really have a cool campaign, and it has been a rather long time that there is an RTS focused game that is focused on a big and long single player campaign with a good storyline.
Because it's just a very unique mix, and I think that doesn't exist out there in the way we did it.